Talking about the woody bits and the green bits,
Green and brown parts.
just like composting and your mama.
What? Wine for real people. What's going on? We're back with talking about the natural factors and the human influences in the vineyard. We're talking about today
The
the vine. Yes, the most important part of it all. You need the vine to have the grapes to have the wine. You see, it's a chain of events.
It's a cyclical cycle, if you will. A big circle.
Let's get into it. You speak Latin, Vigga?
I speak a little bit of Latin. Why are we talking Latin today? I thought we were...
Scientific name of the grape species that we use.
Well, that'd be Vitis vinifera. That's our Eurasian grape species, and it's what we're going to see most of our premier white and red wines being made out of. Think your premier varieties like Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Franc, all Vitis vinifera. And then you're going to have another Vitis species, Vitis lambrusca, which is the more American variety. And we'll see why we need to take both into consideration when we're talking about vineyard management and how we can propagate vines. But let's talk about the natural factors that go into affect these vines when they're out in the vineyard.
Vines live, and as such, they need nutrients. They get that from the soil. They absorb that through their root stock, and they get the nutrients through there. They also need heat. So especially, let's say, Cabernet Sauvignon needs a lot of heat to ripen. You get that from the sun, and you get it reflected from the soil itself. As such, plants also breathe, and they need carbon dioxide, which is naturally found in the atmosphere. And they need oxygen for photosynthesis. They need to drink, so they need water, and that comes from rainfall or irrigation or water that's just generally found in the soil there. And finally, they need sunlight to actually undergo photosynthesis to generate food and whatnot. And sunlight can be reflected from water, let's say on the banks of the Moselle River. Vineyards facing the southeast side get that sunlight as it reflects off the river.
So that brings up a good point, the natural factors that can affect the vine. We need to think about how the grapes can be affected, how the soil can affect the vines, how climate in the region can affect the vine. And climate, we're thinking of the overarching, over decades and decades of time, what the climactic patterns are like, whereas weather is sort of a day-to-day, week-to-week phenomenon that's subject to change on a whim almost. And then we have the natural factors that can affect the vine. That's maturation, which can be a decision on the winemaker's behalf. Grape growing, which is another decision that the winemaker can make. Who would have thunk it? Winemaking is a decision the winemaker can make.
Crazy.
And then something that's sort of outside of the winemaker's control in most instances, the market forces. The market forces sort of drive themselves based on consumers' wants and desires, as well as the supply chain, whether it's in surplus or in shortage.
So we got to talk about the parts of the vine themselves. And the little joke intro that we were doing, we were talking about they can be broken down into green parts and brown parts. So the green parts, there are four main parts that we're looking at. We're talking flowers and berries, your leaves, your buds, and your tendrils. So the flowers are for reproduction, so the plant can propagate itself further into the future. Your leaves are going to be the most important for photosynthesis. That is what's going to capture the sunlight and convert it into sugar and whatnot. Your buds are essentially the next generation. So the buds will be the stems for next year, and as such, they're very important to maintain. So this year's stems that grow the vine, that grow the grapes and whatnot, were last year's buds, to put it like that. And the tendrils are actually like the viney part of the vine. They reach out and they climb trellises and they help provide support.
Sort of like a tomato plant.
Yes, yeah, like a tomato plant. They reach for the plant and they allow it to like climb and overall maximize its sunlight exposure.
All right, let's talk about the brown parts. So the brown parts are really just in reference to the woodier parts. So you'll hear me say they're either green parts or woody parts. So you have the permanent wood, which we're looking at as the trunk. Now the trunk has taken a couple years to mature and get to the size that it is. There are some trunks that are extremely wide and thick if they're older vines, or if they're grape varieties that have more, that are in more uh, environmentally, say, pervasive areas where you need to have a more sturdy build so that your vine can maintain. But you'll see in a lot of old vines, they're much larger. They're much, maybe not necessarily as sturdy, but they're much thicker in circumference because as a living thing, they keep growing the longer that they live. So that's the permanent wood. And then you have your 1 year wood, which comes from your essentially, where are we coming from?
It sprouts. It comes right off that trunk.
Yep, I believe it comes from all the buds.
Yeah, it comes from
at
all
the
the
end of the season.
buds.
So you'll have extra cane. So each of your buds will shoot out cane, and through a process of lignification, the green parts will turn woody. So what you'll do is you'll prune those extra canes. You just want around one or two on each side, and you'll sort of train them down. They start like this. You'll sort of train them down by weighing them down slowly, and that's how you get your buds for next season. They'll sort of grow out of that cane. And when we're talking about the cane itself, the cane is a spur, or not a spur, but a length of wood that has around 8 to 20 buds, whereas a spur is sort of a new cane that has yet to mature that only has around 2 or 3 buds on it.
The trunk then extends into the ground, into the roots, and they allow for the absorbing, storing of carbohydrates, and they anchor the plant to the earth, especially in like windier areas like the island of Santorini. Those roots got to be pretty strong if they're gonna survive the wind.
And another thing, speaking of Santorini, just the way that they arrange their
in
roots.
little baskets.
Yeah, so they train their roots in a way that sort of protects themselves against that harsh wind.
But the rootstock itself protects from pests. It has an increased drought tolerance. The rootstock itself can also compensate for soil composition. So if the pH is off a little bit, it'll mess with that. It will also enhance or inhibit the vigor of the rootstock, whether or not high or low nutrients are in the soil. Going back to what we said about Vitis lambrusca, here's where they come back in with grafting. So American rootstock, for some reason, is pretty much naturally immune to phylloxera. And phylloxera are these little like vineyard mites, and what they do is they just start eating the plant. And it was a big problem for a lot of Vitis vinifera growers in the old world before lambrusca was really discovered to have this anti-phylloxera property. Crops and vintages have been lost to phylloxera, and having pretty much a one-stop shop to like prevent a major pest is a pretty good idea. So as such, most plants undergo the grafting process, and to sum it up in very layman's terms, it's plant surgery. You take your Vitis lambrusca rootstock, and then you put your Vitis vinifera on top of it, and you kind of just like tape it together, and they just kind of mesh together and become just one synonymous plant.
So you can do some different things with Vitis vinifera if you want to achieve different results. You have a couple options of vine propagation. You can clone, you could perform a hybrid sort of propagation, or you could cross. Each of these things is going to have a different outcome. If you clone, that's essentially taking your best producer from one grape variety of a Vitis vinifera. You're cloning it so that you have others that are performing in the way that you have enjoyed. So it's sort of based on mutations that the winemakers perceive as favorable. So if you have a really nice plant of Cabernet Sauvignon that you're growing in, say, Stag's Leap district in Napa, you might, I don't even know if that's what they grow. I think that might be wrong.
Cab Sav and
Is it
Stag
Cab
Sav?
and
Yeah.
Stag Leap?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I Napa.
Um, After the clone, you have hybrids.
Right.
So you have Vitis and Vitis. The biggest example is Cabernet Sauvignon is the child of Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc. You take two Vitis and you cross them together and see what happens. Pinotage, Pinot Noir, and Sanso, stuff like that. And finally, crossings.
I think you flipped crossing and hybrids.
Did I?
You just explained crossing.
Oh.
So hybrid, because this is other Vitis.
Vitis and other Vitis.
No, other Vitis and other Vitis.
Oh, so I don't even know. You say that.
It's other Vitis and other Vitis. So just like this might actually be Vitis and other Vitis, because I believe Vidal Blanc is a cross between, or rather a hybrid of Sauvignon Blanc and Vidal, which is a Canadian ice vine variety. So we'll have to revise that. Stay tuned, but we'll go to a little, I think we can annotate.
We can annotate?
I'm going to draw. So this is that cane that we talked about. Now this, is this going to be, there we go. So this is actually, use your finger. You could,
my little finger. Oh, look at that. Look at that.
All right, we'll get rid of that. But the cane, talk about the cane.
Like I said, the cane is the wood that has 8 to 20 buds on it. This is 1 year old wood, and as such, you can see on the right here, your leaves and stuff is going to shoot off that cane come next season.
Right, and then this right here, the spur, is that sort of pre-cane stage where it's only at 2 to 3 buds. And then right down here, we all know that roots live underneath the soil. So this is what's going to be able to, one, provide an anchor for the vines, and two, it's going to soak up the water for the vines as well, make sure that it's properly hydrated. And you'll see that this root system is very important to maintaining stability in the vines, especially if you're on a place with extremely high aspect, or if you're on a place that has not necessarily very solid soil, very rocky. You want a really strong root structure. Where else? What else do we have to talk about?
We're talking about the graft,
right.
The graft union,
yeah,
right
then,
in here.
Oh, yep.
That's where your plant surgery would happen. It's almost like a scar on the plant. And yeah, off your cane, you have your fruit, and that's this year's product.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. That was wine for.
That was the vine for wine for real people.
That was the vine.
That's a mouthful.
The vine for wine. All right. We'll see you in like 20 minutes
for
the next video, because we're recording these back to back. Ciao.
Goodbye.